Hey there, Derek here with LeetCrush. We are going to be looking at valid parentheses today. And again, this is another easy question, but it is foundational. So we're going to look at it and we're going to go with at first, we're going to go with a not very elegant solution, and then we're going to kind of optimize it and make it a little bit more elegant. Um, and so, if this is interesting, if this is going to be helpful for you, then go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel because we're going to be doing all of the what's called the grind 75. So they created a new list, and it's not. The old list was what was it, blind 75, but this is grind 75. So he kind of refined some of the problems, and so we're going to go through that list in this series of videos. So okay, so let's take a look at the description. It says, given a string containing just the characters open parentheses closed, open curly brace closed, and then open bracket closed, define if the input string is valid. So open brackets must be closed by the same type of brackets, and then open brackets must be closed in the correct order. Okay, so if we look at this, we want to make sure that after an open curly or an open parenthesis, if there's not another opening type of bracket, we want a closed parenthesis. All right, but you know, we could have as many open parentheses in a row as long as they're closed by the same amount of closed parentheses. So that's where we're at. Now, so there are some things that we can do, some data structures that we could probably use for this. And the first one that comes to mind is going to be the stack. And if we look at a stack, it kind of looks like this. And so in that first example, the first intuition that we have is that, all right, if we have this stack structure where we go last in, first out, if we're stacking these, let's go ahead and stack this right here. Okay, so we have this. Let me go ahead. So we have whoops. Let's see. Okay, so in this stack structure, okay, so if we were to look at this visually, we would see that we have this input string, and my first intuition is that we would use a stack. Okay, so we have this stack structure where we have the last in and first out, and so the first in is going to be the very first string. All right, and so that's going to be right here, or the very first character in the string. So here we're going to take this open parenthesis and put it right here. All right, and so now what we want to do is we want to look at the next one. Okay, so right here, and we see that it's a closed one. So we know that that's valid so far. So what we want to do is whenever we see a closed one, we want to look at the top of our stack and see if the preceding one is the same type. Okay, so if we see a closed parenthesis, we want to look into our stack, and the one that we pop off our stack should be a closed parenthesis. And so that's basically the intuition of the problem. And so here we see a closed one, an open one here, so we're going to pop it. Okay, so we get rid of that, and we go to the next one, and we see an open bracket here, and then we see a closed one, so we're going to pop it. we see an open curly brace here. We're going to push it onto the stack, and then we see a closed curly brace here, and we're going to pop it. And so at the end of our string, our stack is going to be empty. All right, and so if at the end of our string, our stack is empty, that's a great thing, because that means we were able to push and pop the correct brackets to solve the problem. Now, if ever, let's go back to this example right here where we have an open parenthesis on the stack, and let's say that it's not an open parenthesis but an open curly brace. So we have this open curly brace in our string. That's our next character, and so we're going to go and look back onto the stack and pop it, and we see that there's this is a closed curly brace, and we see that there's an open curly brace on the stack, and so that's not a good thing, because this is going to be an invalid structure, invalid string, and so what we want to do at that point is return false. Okay, so let's go ahead . So let's go ahead and look at the problem and how we might solve this. So we said we we're going to use that stack structure, and remember, this is like the not optimized way, or it looks like a lot of lines of code. All right, so looking at our previous solution, what we want to do is we want to define a stack. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to use characters. Oops. Okay, so we've defined our stack, and so now what we want to do is we want to loop through our array. Okay, and so here we're going to do for char c in s dot to char array. So s2 char array. And so what we want to do now is we want to see if it is equal to an open bracket of some sort. So we're going to say if c is equal to an open parenthesis, oops. Okay, so if it's equal to open parenthesis, open bracket, open curly bracket, and bracket, what we want to do is we want to push it onto our stack. Okay, so we're going to say stack.push, and we're going to push that character onto our stack. All right. So now what we want to do is we've pushed all the open brackets onto our stack, and now we're going to check to see our closed brackets. So this is after all. So let's say that we the next character in our string is a closed bracket. We're going to have to check each type of closed bracket. So we're going to say if, so else if c is equal to a closed parenthesis. And we're going to check to see the stack is not empty. Okay, so if the stack is empty, that means that it's going to be returning false, right? So because we started off with some, or we're at this point where we have this closed bracket, but we have nothing on the stack to pair it with. Okay, so here we're going to say, so we have this closed bracket. We want to see if stack dot peak is equal to an open parenthesis. Okay, so if it's equal to an open parenthesis, we are going to pop that from the stack. Otherwise, we're going to return false. So we're going to check this condition for two more bracket types. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste, and this is where it's not very elegant. But here we're going to do our closed curly brace. This is going to be an open curly brace. And this is going to be a closed bracket. This is going to be an open bracket. Okay, and so we have these three cases, and then otherwise, it means that the stack is empty when we've encountered these things, and we're going to return false. All right, and then just in case, we're going to after this for loop, we're going to return. Not just in case, but let's say that the stack is empty after we've run through our run through the whole string. We're just going to return stack is empty. Okay, and if it's empty, this is going to return true. If it's not, for whatever reason, it should catch all those cases, but for whatever reason, if it's not, it's going to return false right here. So let's go ahead and run this code. And we have it accepted, and so let's go ahead and see where we're at with this. Okay, so faster than 80%, and our memory is at 32%. Now, this seems like a lot, all right? And so there is a single way to optimize this code that I can think of. There's actually a few, okay? So the first thing we could do is we could check to see if this string is an odd amount of characters. So we're going to say if s dot so if s dot length mod 2 is not equal to 0, that means that there's a remainder of 1. It means that it's not an even number of characters. So we know that it would be false. And so we're just going to return false here. All right, and so now we had 80.52%. And so let's go ahead and see what that gets us. There wasn't really a change, although I would expect there to be, a slight. This would improve things a little bit, especially if you're checking a lot of different strings. This could get rid of that for loop altogether on some of these problems. But there may not be a lot of these problems that are not, an odd number of characters. So we're still right there at the 80.5 for online or for runtime, and then for memory usage we're right at about 50%. So these are pretty good numbers. This is not the elegant solution. Okay, so this elegant solution is not mine, but this right here is how I solved it initially. Okay, and this seems like a lot of code for such a simple problem. And it is. So one thing I highly recommend that you do is after you solved it your way, go ahead and look at previous answers and see how other people solved it, and see, even though you have a really good like runtime, maybe there's an even better way of doing it, or a simpler way of doing it. So let's go ahead and look at a simpler way of doing it, and we're just going to keep our stack because we know that we're going to use a stack, because that's probably the best way of going about it. And remember, this is not my solution, but this is a solution, and it's a whole lot less characters, less typing. So if you're in that interview and they want you to solve this in 15 minutes, you could easily code this out in that 15 minutes. Oops. Okay, so we're still looping through our string and as a char array, and what we're going to do is we're going to say if c is equal to, and here's the beauty of it. If c is equal to an open parenthesis, we're just going to push a closed parenthesis. And the reasoning will become clear here in a second. So we're going to push that closed parenthesis. And I'm going to do this for the other. We'll go ahead and call this an else if, and this an else if as well. And this is going to be an open curly brace. This is going to be an open bracket. And so for an open curly brace, we're going to push a closed curly brace. And for an open bracket, we're going to push a closed bracket. And then basically, at that point, what we're going to do, we're going to check to see if it's empty. So we're going to say stack dot is empty. Or we're going to check to see if stack.pop is not equal to C. All right. And if these two cases are true, we're going to return false. And then at the very bottom of this for loop, we're going to return that the stack is empty. Remember, this is very similar to how I did it, but a lot less lines of code, especially if you like to type it out where this open curly brace is up here, and then so yeah, and if even then you don't even need, since this is a single line here, you wouldn't even need these curly braces, so you could just go ahead and do this one liner right after this if statement, else if, else if. And so it really eliminates all the code or all those extra characters that you're typing out. And so here if this should be C. So this is the character that we're looking at. We're not looking at the string. I'm sure y'all caught that because y'all are empty, because y'all are brilliant. That's what I meant to say. Empty might mean the exact opposite. Okay, so here we have our stack. So else if stack.is empty or stack.pop. Okay. Okay, so remember we're at 80, roughly 80 and 50. So it improved our memory slightly, but it's just less to type out. Okay, but our runtime was roughly the same, exactly the same, in fact. So this may not be optimized very much more, but you know, it is a lot more elegant of a solution. So that's what I like to do with these videos. I like to give you one that seems not optimized, or it seems like a lot of code to type, and then I go back and I'll try to create something that's a little bit more elegant of a solution. And so if this was helpful, go ahead and like the video, or and go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to go through all this, and we're going to go from maybe not knowing a lot of LeetCode to being able to solve a lot of the problems that these top tech companies are going to be asking you. So I'm looking forward to doing the next video with you. See ya.